Welcome to the Redbeard Embodiment Podcast. I am your host, Alex Green, and I'm on a mission to bring the power of embodiment to people all around the world. In this podcast, we explore how embodiment practices, trauma healing, and knowledge about the human nervous system can help us find our ground, discover new sources of meaning, and create connection in an ever-changing world. The deepest change is embodied change. All right, well, it's my very great pleasure to be sitting here today with John Stevens Sensei. He's in Honolulu. I'm in Boulder, Colorado today. And just to share a little bit about the author, scholar, art collector, Zen and Aikido and Sensei that we are with, just to share a little bit about Stevens Sensei's story. Professor living in Japan for 35 years, professor of Aikido and Buddhist studies at Tohoku Fukushi University in Sendai, Japan. I know Stevens Sensei through his prolific authorship, works on Zen scholarly texts, also biographies of key figures in Japanese martial arts history, like Morihei Ueshiba, the founder of Aikido, Yamaoka Tesshu, who we'll be talking about today, Jigoro Kano, the founder of Judo, and Awa Kenzo, a key Kyudo person, as well as many other subjects ranging from art to poetry to sex to the marathon monks of Hiezan. So quite a journey reading through some of your books. I thought I'd start, if it's okay with you, just to share a little bit of how I got connected to you, both first through your books and then through the art world. And my story, going back 20 years ago as a fresh young acolyte studying Zen Buddhism at a monastery in Kalihi Valley in Hawaii, and where Budo and Kendo and Iaido, two forms of Japanese swordsmanship, were a part of the curriculum. And somebody gave me a copy of Stevens Sensei's book, biography on Yamaoka Tesshu, The Sword of No Sword. And this is a newer copy because my original copy is dog-eared and falling apart because at the age of 20, this became sort of the Bible of an exemplar of a historical figure embodying the ideals of swordsmanship, art, and Buddhism. So just to share with you, John, that book just made a tremendous impression on me, and so much so that a decade later, when I started my journey in therapeutic body work, I chose for the name of my company, Redbeard Body Work. Redbeard is a reference to Bodhidharma, and the particular painting of Bodhidharma, who I selected, was one of Tesshu's drawings, became the sort of the mascot for my business. And for me, the real symbolism of that was twofold. One, it was a connection into my own Zen practice, which was an ideal that I wanted to bring into my therapeutic work. But then in particular, Tesshu's drawing or brushwork of Bodhidharma was to me just such a clear specimen of conveying kind of the spirit and the energy of that work. And so for me, it's been a little bit of a guiding star for how I direct my own growth as a practitioner and kind of the energy and spirit that I try to bring into my work. So that's my introduction to that. In later years, I've been honored to purchase a number of works from Tesshu, and behind us here is one of those works, the depiction of Bodhidharma by Yamaoka Tesshu, because I connected with Stevens Sensei as an art collector and dealer. And so I'm fortunate to be the custodian of a number of important pieces. So that's what brought us here today. And today what I'd like to cover is everything from art and Zen, and especially your own history with a deep history with Shugyo and scholarship and Zen, and love to hear your thoughts here today. So thanks so much for joining.
Sure. Hello, everyone. I will start out today, I think, with the Bodhidharma Zenga right behind you, and a little bit about the Genesis, because it's all connected. When I also was enamored of Tesshu's life and inspiration and his art from the very beginning. And then I tried to see as many pieces as I could, because that was my teacher. So there are teachers who explain and teachers who you can see in person. But also in the Zen tradition, there are teachers who left their spirit or expressed their spirit in brush and ink. And Tesshu was number one in that aspect, because he did a million pieces. But every single one was to raise money, and he wanted to do one piece of calligraphy for everybody in Japan. And unlike other forms of art in Asia, that's basically loot, it was stolen. And but Zenga especially is for everybody. It's to be broadcast to the world. So it's not strange that a Tesshu piece is hanging behind you. In fact, it's pretty appropriate. So how it started when I got to Japan, well, begin with when I grew up in Chicago, and from high school, I was interested in the East. And why is that? And people would ask me, why did you come to Japan? And the word we use in Japan is for that experience is inen, which means karmic affinity. So in, there's somehow that was within me in Chicago that I wanted to go to Japan. And en is how it unfolds. So in was the desire to go to Japan. And when I got here, the 35 years I spent there was all evolving, connection, and that's the mystery. How does that happen? Why are we talking right now? So from everyone was well, I guess we're in the same area for a while, right? Chicago and
Honolulu, yeah,
and Honolulu too, right?
Right.
So there's that connection, and then when I used to train to do Budo and do sitting in Zen, but also I wanted to start doing calligraphy and learning about these Zenga, the brushstrokes of enlightenment that were left to us. So every Saturday, I used to go to the antique stores in Sendai and talk to the antique dealers, and we'd spend the whole day discussing pieces. And I didn't have any money then, of course, but you know how you pay back your teachers? So when I got some money, I would acquire things. And I wasn't a dealer, I just a conduit,
Right.
So all the pieces that I've had over the years, they've gone to the right person. My friends or my colleagues or my students or whatever it has. So it's the karma of the piece itself, and you have a connection to Tesshu, and then finding, wow, I can get a Tesshu.
Yeah.
And it's much better than a poster or whatever it is. And so this one, I don't know where I got it. I can't remember, So anyway, so this is perfect for Alex. It had your name on it, really.
It found its destination.
It's found its destination. Now it's hanging behind you. And artistically, the mounting, it's the original mounting, which is perfect. As soon as it's mounted, it loses something. It gets washed a bit and straightened out.
Yeah.
So even in the art market, things in original condition are much better. Zenga.
Right.
And the price goes down if you get it fixed. I think you've got one or two that was remounted. They were torn apart. Mui? Do you have Mui?
Yeah, Mui, I think, was remounted, and wasn't the skull also remounted?
The skull was never mounted, which was okay. So sometimes they're
okay.
Sometimes you find virgin pieces for some reason.
That's right. Yeah.
So they're brand new.
Right. Yeah.
And the Mui one was destroyed. I mean, it was ripped apart, and So in that case, you bring it back to life, and a good mounter understands that. So the mounter in Japan, looks at the piece, and he has to be sensitive,
Right.
colors and to how to restore it. So it's a wonderful art form and a tradition that people will find the person writing it who brushed it, the person who comes into possession, if you have it remounted, and they have to make sure it goes to the right place. And
Right.
usually it goes to the right place in your house. I mean, that's where it should be hanging.
Yeah.
And how is that possible? From Japan to me, and then to you, and then to your patients or your clients who come in.
Yeah.
So, and then there's the meaning, of course, vast emptiness, nothing holy, which is.
Yeah, I was going to read not only the inscription, but your paragraph from the book. I wonder if just for a moment, could you contextualize us in history just for a moment? So Tesshu was could you just give a rough outline of Tesshu's era, and just for those who don't know Yamaka Tesshu, just a very brief summary of his importance.
Well, during the Meiji period, he was very important. Meiji is from 1868 to 1912. So that's the dawning of modern Japan. Mm. And when he was a young man, he was a Kendo demon. There's his nickname, the demon. But he was a big guy. He was like more than 6 feet tall. And in Japan, a giant, you know? And so he thought he could beat everybody. Could beat anyone in Japan physically. Mm. And then he finally lost to Asari Sensei, who's a much smaller guy, older. Mm. And then he realized, well, no matter how strong I am, I can't beat him because his superior understanding or bearing. Yeah. So that's when he started doing Zen, and then he became an important figure in the Meiji government. He was Emperor Meiji's bodyguard, or chamberlain. He was, so he served in the in the imperial household. At the same time, he ran a dojo, and he had a very big influence in Japanese history. Mm. So anyway, but the thing he did, calligraphy to raise money and to endow temples. He founded a temple, Zenshuan, to pray for all of the souls that were killed during the Civil War. Mm. And so he endowed that with 100,000 pieces, and another temple he got 100,000 pieces. So the journal, at the dojo, they had a list of all the calligraphy he did every day. The disciples. So one day was 500, one day was 1,000. If he owed a lot of money, he did 1,500. So it's all carefully documented. It isn't made up.
And isn't the story that he himself, although he was a government official and serious Zen practitioner, although a lay practitioner, but he didn't sort of accumulate personal riches, and
not at all.
People would come to him and his way of and he was famous enough during his lifetime as a calligrapher that poor people could come and ask him, and he was quite generous with producing pieces to help people. Is that correct?
That's right. So it was like Buddha aid in the old days, and he would give literally 100,000 pieces to sell, and they would sold. And so he would do dog tags. He said, "Don't kill this dog. Bring it to Tesshu." And the hats and all, huge. Shinto shrines, they had these 10-foot high banners. You could do that, and it's astounding. It's astounding. I've been all over Japan. No matter how deep in the country I was, I'd go into a soba shop or something, and there'd be a signboard, Yamaka Tesshu.
Nice.
And it's very inspiring. He died. He was active about 10 years. He died when he was 52. Mm. And from like 42 was his great awakening. And then from 42 to 52, then he did this tremendous amount of calligraphy and brushwork. And so it ended up behind you. And it changes the room, right? Hanging
Very
it.
much so.
Very much so. It really does.
Yeah.
And I used to have Zen all over my office at the university. And every once in a while, I would look up. And the Dharma was looking at me. looking back at me.
Right.
It's okay. Okay. Back to work. Back to work.
Right. Well, I think that's that's something that I think is distinct about Zen art, or at least distinguished from Western art in terms of its purpose. I would love to hear your perspective, but how we learned in
Yeah.
as a Zen student, and the importance of art in our tradition was it was to be used. It was a capture of a mind body spiritual state preserved in ink, and part of our training included that if we were not yet sensitive to being able to, in a sense, take in what was being offered from the piece, well, then of course our we needed to continue to develop in our training. And for me, about a decade ago or so, when I first got some of these early pieces, Tesshu pieces from you, I had several, and I had to be careful about how I arranged them in my bodywork studio, because there was kind of only one way that they would work without sort of competing with one, without overpowering the space, but still offering something to the space. So to me, there's a utility that comes from Zen art, different than representational art. Or could you speak to that just a little bit from your view?
Well, the dynamic of it is that you are attracted to something, and again, I would go to an antique fair, and there's literally a million pieces there, right? And somehow one of those pieces will call out and say, "Please take me, please take me." And so that's where it goes. So that's the original connection. Then you have it at home, and in your studio or your office, and the dynamic changes, right? Your perspective on it changes, and the flow, the key from this place to that place, feng shui. And it's just a Mui, right? Mui is not doing it. It's really more of a Chinese thing. And somehow maybe that was the first one you got, I think.
That was the first, yes, good memory. Yep.
And that's a wonderful piece, because it's both Chinese and Japanese. It's two essential principles in both of those traditions, which you kind of do, right? In your work, you have some, and so there's a reason you got that. And then that's also brand new, right? It's resurrected because it was torn apart. Right. It's lovingly restored, which is okay in that case.
Well, in that piece, the restoration it's clear, but it adds. I mean, the attention to the restoration and then the remounting, in my view, is part of what is being offered by the piece.
It's very hard to find a mounter, scroll mover who can do that these days. It's mostly just generic, or but the mounter I used for a long time, I was his only customer, I guess. But he spent a lot of time on the pieces and thought about it, and the color scheme. And if you look closely, the paper is pretty ripped up and almost destroyed.
Right.
But it somehow brought back to life. It's color.
Right. You're talking about the Mui piece.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you can see that there would have been a hole or something, but exactly, but it was mended and
painstakingly, lovingly,
quite beautifully. Yeah,
beautifully. So not just framing. So
well, I thought I would. So I'm just going to mention your most recent offering, and then I want to read your short paragraph about this piece behind us.
Okay.
But just briefly, this is Stevens Sensei's most current book, The Art of Budo. You've written other books on calligraphy, but if I understand it, the theme here is the calligraphy being offered by Budo, referring to the martial arts, the martial artists.
In the widest possible sense, yeah.
Exactly. Just briefly, while we're on the topic of this Daruma behind us, I thought I would just read what you wrote. And so the story of Bodhidharma is the first patriarch of Zen. He was from northern India, is my understanding, traveled over the mountains, landed in China somewhere in fourth century.
Fourth century,
somewhere in that era.
It doesn't matter.
and he had an encounter with the Emperor Wu, and he felt misunderstood, or it was clear, and then that he realized he needed to spend some more time in order to sort of communicate how is he going to convey Buddhism into this new culture. So the what's written here, so the on the piece behind us, the inscription reads, "Vast emptiness, nothing holy," and that's a phrase that Bodhidharma used in this encounter with Emperor Wu. So the interview went something like this: Emperor Wu, I have built numerous temples, commissioned many sutras, and supported hundreds of monks and nuns. How great is my merit? And Bodhidharma replied, no merit. Emperor Wu said, what is the first principle of Buddhism? Bodhidharma replied, vast emptiness, nothing holy. Emperor Wu said, who are you? Bodhidharma, don't know. And from Stevens Sensei here, this style of side view Daruma is one of Tesshu's trademark Zengas. The first patriarch is telling us Zen transcends all formulas and notions of sacred and profane. A painting of Daruma can be a spiritual self-portrait. Frequently, the Daruma physically resembles the artist. This one does indeed look like Tesshu and projects a living presence.
And that's it.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
very nice.
It's like July, right? Behind you? It was like it was done yesterday. Doesn't matter, right? You know,
right.
It's like at the end, so you can't tell if it was done yesterday or 1,000 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
And it's, you know, modern art. It's contemporary. A lot of these things could be, you know, modern art exhibitions. They have been. I've had some Zenga in you know, 21st century contemporary art, modern art. It fits a perfect agenda. Goes right into it. Abstract and concrete at the same time, and it becomes everyone who looks at a piece like that. It's best to, you know, see it in person, of course, but also even in the book. You know, I was just before we started talking, I was looking through it again. Oh, wait a second. Wait. Page 201.
There's the Mui. Yeah.
So what we're talking about. So that's why I do these books like this to make them accessible. Also, the best thing is the exhibitions too. You know,
right.
I'm into that. And,
you've done a number, right? Europe, the United, a number of exhibitions. Yeah.
And they've been great successes. And you know, often I'll go to, but these are, you know, Los Angeles, New Orleans, Seattle, Berlin. Anyway, lots of different places all over the world. Sometimes I'll just go and sit and watch people's reactions.
Sure.
And you know, I've been to some places where the carpenters who make the frames, who work at the museum, and they really like the pieces. And they have absolutely no idea what it is, but for somehow it speaks to them. And one time I was sitting, and there's the Zenga was between two galleries. There's one gallery to the right and one gallery to the left. And so people had to walk by the painting to go from one gallery to the other, different exhibitions. And there'd be people who walk by the Zenga and stop and then look at it 15 minutes. And then go. It had that kind of shock value for them, you know.
Right.
But people start crying, you know.
Yeah.
People kind of go into a kind of swooning, almost rocking back and forth, because it has that effect on you, and without knowing what it is. Somehow there's
right, because and that's which is a good illustration that it's not what's being symbolized, it's what's being transmitted. Transmitted.
So but that's part of my tradition, and I learned really the most in my training I got from the Zen Art, is the pictures. Not only that, the mandalas and, you know, Buddha images and things like that. The truth can't be represented, but the truth can be. You need images to approach the truth, and it's so skillful means. So Zen has got nothing to do with words, but you need the words to get there. Like the boat, you know, the boat from this shore to that shore. You need a vehicle to go through it, and one of the best vehicles is Zen Art, because it was done for the express purposes of enlightenment, being
Right.
enlightened.
Right.
Actually, it's an encouragement too, as well. Right? So when we did send, with Terayama Sensei, who was disciple of Omoe Roshi, and at his place, we'd come and sit for a half hour, and then we'd look at 5 masterpieces, and then we would do the calligraphy. So the thing is, the masterpieces were to encourage you. We can go this far. Maybe this is what we want to be.
Yeah,
that's what I like to, that approach I'd like to use is sitting for a half hour and then talking for a half hour, discussing.
Right.
The click of the flow of the ink, the energy, the placement, all this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Discuss that and then go do it.
Right. So, there's a concept. Terayama Sensei has a well-known book on calligraphy, right? That's the same Terayama Sensei.
Mm-hmm. This guy, Terayama Sensei.
That's right. Yeah. And I think in that book, he uses a term that we used in our training, boki, referring to the key of the ink. Yeah. You speak about that for a moment?
This is kind of a funny story because boki also means erection. So if you talk to a Japanese about the boki, that's the first thing that comes to their mind. I know if you want to put this on the tape.
Right.
So you have to be careful.
We'll keep it in there. We'll keep it in there.
But that's, the boki behind you in the Tesshu is that it's the energy. And Terayama Sensei said, well, if we blow up, magnify the stroke or the stroke 550,000 times or whatever it is, and then you can see the particles of the key. So that's what his scientific approach. But and they would take some other pieces, inferior pieces, and then it'd be muddled. But and that's okay. But that really wasn't my thing, But I think to understand it, you just have to look at a lot of pieces.
Yep.
Person, that's see it, and then you can understand. And then when you had 5 pieces hanging, then you can kind of tell the boki there with the energy, how it flows, and what this person's particular energy, or how strong it is. That's kansho means appreciation or contemplation of a piece. So it isn't looking at it from an artistic standpoint, even. It's the kind of the energy flow, and then and of course there's early Tesshu and later Tesshu, things like that. So you can see the progression.
Right.
And the boki gets deeper and deeper and deeper. So the best calligraphy are the pieces that were done just before a person's death. The final statement, in general, And in Zen calligraphy, you don't start till you're in your 50s. In fact, for your first exhibition, if you're a calligrapher, it has to be age 50. You can't have one before that.
Interesting. Yeah.
You've got to be, and if you do that, you get your senpai, your senior will say, "What are you doing?"
Are you? Yeah.
So that's true. You have 50 pieces when you're 50 years old, and that's when you start. So that's in the case we did. And I think now you do promote yourself and go on social media and that kind of stuff. But before it was you were hidden. You're doing shugo. You were training until you had enough years under your belt, and you're ready to show it.
Right.
So from artistic training, I think I also believe in that. That you don't really start doing it until you're 50, and then keeping yourself hidden for a number of years. That's also Zen tradition. Disappearing for a time. And working on yourself, and that's kind of the social contribution that you have to give back to society. That can only come. They can do that when you're ready,
right,
to give it. But you've got to do that. So you can't stay hidden away forever, but you've got to come back to the world and interact and all that sort of stuff. So, and the connections that people have connecting with Zen Art, for example, and it's stays with them forever, right? The impression you have, and like that one, you're not going to get tired of looking at that,
right?
Not, and somebody's going to walk in and say, "Wow, what is that?" Some people ignore, some people won't know anything, but to always see somebody, wow. I've had that happen very often with me and with people with me, and and when I give talks like this, or we're doing now, the audience, the people I'm with, will see things in it that I didn't see. So it's very educational for me. They have different eyes on it, which is perfect. That's the way it should be.
Sure.
Yeah. And from their experience and from what they see, what they feel.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of having exhibited, shown, talk to people.
Sure.
And when people come here, then I show all the stuff I have, and then a lot of times people will buy it.
Right.
Give me that. They come to my house, they come to my office and start enrolling it. I'm taking this, But I learned that on the side here, if I can, is that often if you show somebody a piece, they say, "I really want that," and I'll say, "Well, I'm not ready to sell it yet." And they say, "When are you ready to sell it?" And then, but I have to precede that with there was a very famous Serizawa Sensei was a folk artist, and he had the good fortune to be able to exchange his work. His work was valuable, so he exchanged it for other pieces. But anyway, he had a very nice painting. You know Manju, right? Manju, Manju Street? Yeah. And 13th century. And he had a friend said, "Gee, I really want that painting." And he said, "Well, I'm not ready to sell it yet." And then every year, on New Year's Day, say, "You ready to sell?" He said, "Not yet." Say, "You ready to sell?" "Not yet." And then one year he didn't call. He passed away. And when I heard that, I said, "Okay, if somebody wants it." Because sometimes I really like some of the pieces. But,
right. I was going to say, must be. I can appreciate how that must be hard for you to, what do you let go of? What do you, it's a
but
balance.
I still had it for some things I really wanted to keep. They weren't mine, but it's just I loved them. But then from that time I heard that, if I showed something to somebody, I had to be able to let it go. And but I had to, so I don't show it to anybody.
If you don't even show it if you're not.
You don't even show it.
There's always the chance that you'll let it go. Yeah.
And one time my mounter, I sent to the mounter and I said, he didn't finish it. I called him up and said, "Well, where is it?" He said, "Oh, it's almost done. It's almost done." And a couple months later, I said, "Where is it?" And it's almost done. It's almost done. And then finally I called him, "Where is it? What are you doing?" He said, "How much do you want for it?" So he didn't want to give it back.
Right.
And he gave it back to me. And then he called me the next day, "How much do you want for it?"
Right.
So I had to tap out.
Oh, man.
Anyway, I have a lot of funny stories about that. And just for some reason, it was such a, it wasn't a famous guy or anything. Just something that spoke to him so strongly.
Yeah.
And so I had things that I'd get back from the mounter at my office, and some people would be there, and I'd take it out, look at it, and they'd buy it. So I had it for 10 seconds. But went to the right.
Yeah.
Right,
some pieces you've held on to for minutes, and some you've held on to for decades. I imagine. Yeah.
Not, most of them have gone. For which just what we're talking about now with people here. Yeah. Want to buy it, and people come to the university, and people. Can we talk a little bit more? Is this okay? I'm kind of going on and on.
Yeah, please.
One time I was in San Francisco at the Asian Art Museum. 300 people were in the hall. It gives a talk on Zenga. And so I don't like to use slides. I like to use the real pieces. So I had a Tesshu, Tesshu, the Mount Fuji with the couple? The older couple? Yeah, that one. I think it's in here. But
at first I was thinking about the one with the snail, but yes. That one.
It's like this. It was a similar one.
Yeah.
And after I finished the lecture, a woman came up to me from the audience. She said, I want that painting. I went to that scroll. And I said, well, it's mine.
Yeah, this is my
I
personal
don't care.
collection.
Maybe you should name your price.
Yeah.
This is the auditorium. And I said, you know, the market price, you know, it was like maybe $5,000 or whatever it was. That's
Yeah.
what it was. That's, you know, that's a fair price.
Yeah.
And she said, okay. She pulled out wrote me a check for it.
There it was.
And she disappeared, and I never saw her again. But it somehow from a distance, she fell in love with that painting so much, and you know, came up there, and then, you know, it was a fair amount of money.
Mm.
You know, I thought, well, I'll think about it, and things like that.
Yeah. No, she was ready on the spot. Yeah.
So I mean, you have to be careful, you know, or giving a talk.
There's a risk every time you show a piece. You don't know who it will
It-
grab and inspire.
That's
Yeah.
okay. That's a funny story though, because
That is a funny story. Well, you know, when we spoke the other week, I was asking you, you know, from your long training and time in Japan, and the question I asked was, what could, you know, in the West, we have this term now, embodiment. That's the name of this podcast, the Redbeard Embodiment Podcast. And embodiment is a movement that refers to everything from athletics to martial arts to dance to a meditation. It's just this idea of, you know, what can be learned through the body. And the question I asked you is, what, in your experience in Aikido and in Zen and in Japanese culture, what does that cultural context, you know, what can the West learn? And the first thing that came up for you was the concept of shugyo. And so I was hoping you would let us know a little bit about that. What's meant by the term shugyo, and just share some stories on that.
Well, the idea in Japanese culture is that everyone has some kind of shugyo to do, and that's part of what to be a human being is to practice some way, which means concentrated effort, making it real, understanding yourself. You know, that's embodiment, and it could be the flowers or tea or Budo or Zen or Shingon or any kind of thing. This pilgrimage,
writing, pilgrimage, yeah.
But it was visceral kind of stuff. So it wasn't like reading was not really a
cognitive.
It can't be a shugyo, but not really. Shugyo is something you do.
Yeah.
Physically, it's more than it's not. Reading is fine, but that's sort of secondary to it. You know, or theorizing. Philosophy is out. You know, that's not not even a consideration.
Right. Right.
And you should keep your mouth shut and just, you know, work on your shugyo, whatever that is. Doing the heart sutra every day. One shugyo was I used, you know, in Japan, the temple bell was rung at 5 o'clock in the morning, and there was always a line of people waiting to strike the bell. 5 o'clock in the morning, always. And you know, and it was cold in Sendai. I mean, freezing cold, almost like Chicago, Wisconsin cold.
Right.
And people had been there going every day for years and years and years. And then, you know, I talked to a few of them, and that was for my colleagues who had fallen in the war. So for 50 years they'd been hitting the bell in memory of all the people who were killed. And that's a shugyo.
Yeah.
And just doing that 100 days in a row. So a lot of the shugyo was divided usually 100 days or 1,000 days. So you did some vow, whatever it was, and do that 1,000 days in a row, or do 100 days in a row with no breaks. And you cannot stop for any reason. And the earliest you stop, you got to kill yourself. You're gonna die. And you know, so in my case, I did 1,000 days shugyo, but it was mostly just getting up in the morning at like 4 and then training till about 8. But I had a job, I had a family.
Yeah.
So that was appropriate for me to do that. So I said, and also I wanted to do it 1,000 days in a row. And you know, it's the storming or whatever, it's raining or snowing or whatever, it's being sick, you still had to do it. You had to do it. And that's formed your character. And I was also, but since I was married, I didn't take a death vow, a suicide vow. So normally when you do the 1,000-day training, you take a suicide vow. If you don't finish, you'll
seppuku, you cut your belly. Yeah.
Seppuku or choke yourself, or often jump off a mountain. There's another one. Those 3 ways of that.
I see.
Stemigyo, you know, stemi, throw your body away. So that means jump off into a waterfall or whatever. So, but in my case, I had a family, I had a job.
Mm.
So if something happened to my family, then I'd stop.
Yeah.
But it didn't. I mean, it started a little more than 1,000 days. But that just involved me getting up and doing those, I had meditation and doing some 1,000 strokes and
Aikido. Was it in Aikido?
And Aikido was Kendo. It was also mixed.
Yeah, I see. Okay.
And running up and down the temple stairs and pounding the it was really like kind of a movie, but I was doing it by myself. There's nobody around, except for people. And but that was my shugyo. I really got a lot from that. And it wasn't just that we did get up and go and listen to what's going on. And when I did a zazen in the temple, formal style. And then I went to the mountain, I facing the wall. And then I went up to the temple on the mountain on the veranda there, and I faced outside. So like Taoist meditation. So I did the Soto, the rigmarole kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Then I went up and did Taoist, not on purpose. I just sat,
Yeah.
Just sat. And then, I could hear these birds are going to sing now. These insects are going to chirp, and the changes in the seasons. Japan in the old days before climate change, the seasons are very regular.
Right.
You could really feel them. So the whole thing was getting colder, colder, and colder until it was a great cold, and it was getting a little bit warmer, warmer, warmer. And then as you could feel the sap running in the trees, and the flowers bloomed, the cherry blossoms. We were so happy. But it was nonverbal. It wasn't studying. We were just sitting. So I did the Zen part.
Yeah.
And I did the Taoist part. And but that was just doing that, for every day.
Yeah.
And no matter what.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I've heard the Amori Sogen and his student Tanoe Roshi, who sort of developed Chozenji in Hawaii. That was the place that I trained. Tanoe Roshi would always speak about, the concept of shugyo, just the word itself, difficult to translate because there's not exactly, we could say practice or hard training or spiritual forging or, or something, but it was the concept was not, we didn't have a clear analogy in Western culture.
No. Yeah. I can't think of shugyo. It's just something, the idea is intense and focused and all out. And give everything you have. And it's focused training. And you need some. It can be simple as best too. Not doing a lot of different chants and doing. Just take one thing, and focusing on that and not thinking so much about it.
Right.
So my cat was just the foreigner in the neighborhood, but it was perfectly fine. They thought people do that. That's what they do. Go up, go in the temple, and I wasn't crazy at all. And, but that's what kept me. That's the core. That's the core of what I am. Came from that. And
I see.
Simple practice. And, being grateful for the especially the Taoist meditation was just sitting. And being open. So it's open to the outside. Whereas the Buddhism tend to be kind of looking in, right?
And inwardly focused, or wall gazing. Yeah.
Taoist is the opposite.
Yeah.
Shinto meditation,
Yeah.
It's done outside and you're wide open. So I had those two elements in me, so.
Sure.
Anyway, so the shugyo it's hard to explain. It's a kototama. Do you know kototama?
I'm not sure.
It's like a
mantra. Okay.
So that's shugyo. Gyo is practice. Gyo.
Yeah.
So, whenever there's something happens and you say, well, let's do shugyo together. So you can do shugyo by yourself, which is necessary sometimes, but then you can do shugyo with each other. So when you're training, we're all doing shugyo. And that's the best in some way. Well, it's a social part of it,
Yeah. Well, I was going to say earlier, there's the self-work, deepening but there's a big relational component. I mean, you were sharing, just so much of the oral tradition or the and senpai kohai relationships, and of course the teachers. But to me, what's so strong in this overall tradition is what's being communicated between people through relationship. That's a strong piece of it.
Yeah. It's a mystery in a lot of ways. You can't explain it. Just that how it develops and why you're doing it and what you're attracted to. So I was attracted to martial arts. So I did I did some kenjutsu.
Okay.
I did Shenji Kempo for a while, but I focused on you should focus on one thing though. You shouldn't mix things up. That's what I would suggest. And you can't do all kinds of different shugyo.
Right. Can't do it all. We can't do it all at once. It requires a focus.
Just do this. Yeah.
Well, something that strikes me is, when I'm hearing your description, I think, and again, I'm sort of thinking this East-West comparison just a little bit. And I think, in the West, we've so much inherited this mind-body dualism and whatnot. And it seems to me that it's such a different perspective in Japanese culture and the Budo traditions, in any of the shugyo, the fine arts, but that something that arises out of any shugyo is you can't say it's mind, you can't say it's body, you have to say it's it certainly can't be I know how to do something. It can't just be at the level of cognitive knowledge. Somehow there's a fusion of the action and the body mind that's participating in it. Yeah. Do you think do you agree that there's sort of a mind body that it's not a separate in these?
Oh no, not at all. But we in Japan, or at least Asian culture, it wasn't verbalized like that. Body mind, it's not part of the equation. You know, so they don't think of embodiment. That's sort of a modern thing.
Right.
You did that. You didn't make a big deal out of it either. That's just what people do.
Right.
And
well, it makes me think of the character for Shin or Kokoro is sort of, if I understand correctly, it's sort of heart and mind. You can't
center,
or center,
base, And it's that's another one you can't define. It's a feeling. Kokoro, is it sense? It's embracing. Also. So when you had a calligraphy for Kokoro on your house behind you, that's what I thought. So
that's right. Yep.
If you ask Japanese oftentimes what's the most important thing to you, they often say Kokoro. One word.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
Yeah.
You don't have to go into it.
Feeling. Yeah. I mean, I guess my translation would be, when I think of that, it's, what's the feeling?
Feeling, yeah.
Yeah.
But, so what else? And then everything becomes shugyo. Like you're always doing Zen. Another meaning of Zen is Zenbu, everything. But there's Zen, meditation Zen, and there's everything Zen. That everything is included. We're all connected, and that's when your shugyo goes out. And you can always be doing meditation. Always, And so it's not even separate. Whatever you're doing is shugyo. If you're doing it properly, aware of what's going on, and even slipping up is part of your shugyo. You can't think I'm doing my shugyo now, or I'm a tough guy, or I'm a great artist. You can't think that way either. It's always more. There's more to learn, because the best masters are the most modest, almost without exception.
Sure.
Not boastful. That's where I've come from too. Is that all my time they were just matter of fact, and they never say anything about how good they were, or just the credentials and all that stuff. That was talk about that. So I still don't like it. I still don't like it. I'm talking about myself now, but for the most part, I didn't say anything. I just don't like to talk about that stuff. And, it's personal. And if even doing like my memoirs, people would ask, please do your memoirs, because be interested. But I don't do that. Because you have an agenda, right? For one, you want to make yourself look good, of course.
Right.
So, only in the context of people I've known, like we're talking now, funny stories and this and that. That's okay.
Yeah.
Not about I did this, I did that. It was more what I learned or encounters.
Yeah.
Relationships.
Yeah.
karmic affinity,
Yeah.
what it did, how
Yeah.
things happen. So when in my age now, I think a lot about that, and because I've been out of Japan for 15 years, and the memories I have though, much of training, Shijo, the place,
Mm-hmm.
the sound of your teacher's voice,
Mm.
you know,
Mm.
the background, the waves,
Mm.
that was the whole the connectivity. And one of my calligraphy teachers, I was doing like with Terayama Sensei and doing the big brush and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And my one calligraphy teacher was a lady, a little, maybe half my size.
Mm.
And this we do it at a table. This was Africana, mostly small size calligraphy.
Mm-hmm.
And she put her hand on my shoulder, and then she would guide my hand this way.
Mm.
And she could stop me. Did not move. And it was loving, it was just so wonderful, that experience of holding it. And then she asked me, "Oh, are you okay? Are you hungry?" she could tell me from one brushstroke. But I'll never forget that touch.
Yeah.
The lightest possible kind of key touch. And this is loving pressing down on the finger,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I could not move.
Wow.
And that was as strong as anyone I'd ever trained with.
Yeah.
And just this little tiny.
Yep. Just stopped you.
That's a martial artist. That was a martial artist. Yeah.
Well, it's not exactly the same, but there's one story from the Tesshu book that from your biography that always, there's so many vignettes and anecdotes in there, but that word you used, encounters, is such a good one, because so much of the Zen tradition, the Budo tradition, is some of these encounters get captured. But one of the stories that I really love in that is the story of the storyteller who meets with Tesshu, and Tesshu says, "Oh, I hear you're a famous storyteller. Tell me a story." And so he kind of rattles off, Momotaro or something. And Tesshu says, "That's awful, man. Like, there's no aliveness."
Yeah, that's a great story.
And so the guy's offended, but then later he comes back and he says, "Well, maybe I should learn Zazen, or sitting meditation." And my favorite part is that Tesshu says, "Yeah, good idea. Let's, and the guy says, "Well, when can we start?" He said, "No time like the present." And then just he puts him in his guest room. He gives him a koan and basically doesn't let him leave his house for a week. But the idea that, that encounter, right? The guy comes to him, something's on his mind, and then somehow Tesshu has the presence and the wherewithal to just sit him down and get him started on that Zen in such a direct way. To me, it's stories like that carry so much of the tradition.
Yeah, well, that's the whole thing. It's spontaneous or serendipitous or whatever it is. What happens like that. And I used to, in my dojo at the university, Aikido dojo, and a lot of times foreign students especially would show up and say, "Will Aikido meet my needs?" And I would say, "Fuck your needs. Either you train every day or don't come at all."
Right. Yeah.
That's all I said.
Yeah.
And that was, most of them were gone. That made me so mad, that question, meet my needs. So I don't know if I said exactly like that, but that's what I meant,
Yeah. That was the feeling. Yeah, no doubt.
And it has to be like that. People looking around and say, "Well, meet my needs." Not hearing you should go to meet your needs.
Right. Well, the other thing, when I think about Budo and other Japanese do or arts, I think in the modern era, or I'm thinking about Western culture today. It feels like we exercise for our health. We do sports for maybe our health, but also our enjoyment. We do therapy for our psychological development. It's like there's a bit of a compartmentalization of our activities. But when I think about Budo or other forms of Shugyo, especially in that Japanese context, it's Budo is not about winning a it's not about mere self-defense. It's certainly not about winning. It's somehow it includes this physical, spirit, you could say spiritual, psychological development. They get connected, which to me is different than how we approach a lot of things, at least in today's culture.
Yeah, it's been compartmentalized, as you mentioned. So
yeah,
part of that is it's funny we're talking about that here about social media and losing contact with human beings. That was so that's what I miss, is the interaction. And that's things, what one word can change your life, right? If you're actually with the person. And or one vision, a single sight, a single vision can change, what's the saying? One look, awakening, complete awakening. Well, so one look, one glance, love at first glance, but one glance can change your life, especially with even certain calligraphy. I've had just a second. This one. That really affected me. And it's from the 15th century. It's one. But the power behind that. And he was a martial artist guy. So it's just like, right in the face.
Something so simple, yet the impact.
Impact is tremendous.
Wow.
That's in a ashram now.
Okay.
So I like my pieces to go, that's a perfect place for it. It's just such a strong piece. So the impact, and also Buddha images too, some of those can be so beautiful and so touching. Jizo?
Yeah, Jizo.
Yeah, Jizo is my favorite. And Kano-sama, but some of the expressions, the faces are so beautiful, not conventionally beautiful, but just.
When my mom was a big, we lived in Japan in the 90s for 2 years, and all she did was go to flea markets when she wasn't working. She just loved it, and her favorite was Jizo. So she just has the biggest, not so much paintings, but a lot of
images. Actually, Jizo images are better than painting. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, absolutely. No, very cool. Well, I loved last time we were joking that, you're kind of a matchmaker. But instead of, arranging marriages and things like that, you're a matchmaker for you facilitate.
I forgot about that. That's true.
People and their karmic affinity for pieces of Zen art. Do you keep track of most of, do you kind of have a sense of where most things have
almost, except for the lady who bought from the stage. I don't know what happened to her, but because they are in you. So part of me is in that Tesshu behind you.
Yeah.
Because I looked at it. So part of me is in that.
Yeah.
And so I know kind of where they go and the flow, and they go to the right person. So that went to the right person, you, right? And so that's another thing, the karmic connection, the flow, Dharma flow, that goes to where it's supposed to be. And I've never been, so, if somebody's not open to it, I won't show it to them, or I wouldn't, no matter how much money was offered. That's true of most really good dealers. They won't, the old-fashioned guys are great too. If they didn't like you, if you had the wrong intention, they wouldn't sell to you.
Yeah, you weren't going to have it. Yeah.
You weren't going to have it. Yeah. And so I remember, well, I think I've probably seen more Zenga than anybody ever, right? Thanks to modern media too.
You maybe have seen as many as Tesshu produced.
Maybe. But that's thanks to modern media too,
Right.
Before you had to go, and I did go. I love that, going all around, different out of the way antiques dealers and temples and all that kind of stuff. So the finding them and bringing them back and then studying them myself, looking at them, and then they go somewhere where they should. So maybe I'd like to do something about that someday, a book, The Dharma of Antiques or whatever it is. Why do certain things come to you? What did it mean to you? And that's part of our tradition, right? A very important part of our tradition.
Yeah.
And not to have a copy of it or a poster, to actually have the thing. And we can get them. They aren't expensive compared to a lot of stuff.
Relatively, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, they're yeah. No, it's to me, it's been a very practical investment. I don't consider it a luxury. I mean, it is a luxury in many ways, but it's a practical reason. Yeah.
So now I can't travel anymore, and so I guess I'm relying on Zoom talks, which I was never in favor of, but it can't be helped. Some things just can't be helped. And I'm still not on social media though, or doing that kind of stuff. And it used to be very hard to find deliberately, but now I'm more personable, more open. And I'm talking about myself too. I do that more than I used to, but it's practical. It's my experience.
Oh, well, Stevens Sensei, I so appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation with you today.
Yeah, it's great. Are we finished?
Yeah, well, I want to be respectful of your time. Yeah. Well, yeah. Is there anything else that I'm not in any rush, but is there anything else we should touch upon?
Well, one thing I think I mentioned last time is very important for me, because from Japanese culture, is the four gratitudes. Gratitude for being alive, to the universe, and then gratitude to your ancestors, and also the matriarchs and patriarchs of your clan, and also your teachers and people before us. And gratitude to each other, your fellow human beings who help you, build civilization. And then the fourth is gratitude towards the plants and animals that sacrifice their life to you. So that's kind of the heart of Japanese culture. Respect, gratitude and respect. So you need those, it could be to the universe, it could be God or whatever you want to think, that, and then people who are before you, and then your friends. And then also the plants and animals.
Sure.
And the gratitude. Another one is for Shion is the four debts. So again, we have the debts to our teachers and our parents, our debts to our teachers who taught us these things. So we never forget that we had to repay our debt. So that's what I felt to my teachers. That I write all these books and do these things. I want to pay the debt. I had a good teacher. I had good teachers. And that's the most important thing. For the continuity is that it's a debt to pay, and then debt to your parents, whoever raised you, and then the debt to your fellow human beings, and then again the debt to the environment,
natural world,
natural world, So that's the bedrock of Japanese culture, human culture, So they're simple things, but you have to be that's involved in that. And the other one is gratitude, misogi, finding your own path, and social contribution. That's one of the things. So
gratitude, misogi. Is that purification?
Purification, finding your own way, finding your own. It's kirihiraku means open, like clear forest or clear path, your path. And then the last one is social contribution. Giving back. That can be all kinds of different expressions. But that was one thing I got from my teacher, especially. That was his take on things. And gratitude and respect are the same, really. Right? Gratitude and respect are the same. And we still do purification together. We do whenever we train anyway. We do purification. That's purification of body and mind. That's embodiment, right? Do that.
Oh, for sure.
Then you have to find your way. You have to find your own technique. Because you can't copy anyone else. You're finding your own path. And the last one is giving back. So simple things. But
that sequence there is that it resonates from my own training and whatnot. I haven't seen that formulation. Is that come out of Aikido?
My teacher.
Okay, I see.
So that's a person that was from director of my teacher, which really made a deep impression on me. I'll never forget. That's what I teach my students.
I see. Yeah.
So that's what he always talked about that and lived that way. And not just talking about it. But,
yeah.
So that made a big impression on me. That's what he said, how he said it. That's not wrote it. It wasn't written. I didn't read it, but how he said it, and it was just it's the sound of his voice. And sitting in the dojo when it's freezing in northern Japan, or it's really hotter than hell. I mean, so
yeah. Well, I just want to share just a brief resonance with that the sound of the voice and one's teacher, and to me, one of my own karmic connections, to use your phrase, is after my kind of a foundation in Zen and Budo in my 20s, on a visit back to Chozenji, I received a phone call, but it was a voicemail, and it was from somebody who I had heard from within our sangha, but somebody who had left. Not had left, but I didn't know him directly, but I knew of him, and I knew he was a body worker. I knew he lived in Chicago. His name was Everett, and he left me a voicemail because he was old friends with my parents. And so he had found me through some probably social media or something like that. So he got my phone number. He left me a voicemail, and I listened to this voicemail once or twice, and I thought, wow, there is something about that person's voice, just literally the sound of the voice, the warmth, the kokoro, there was just something so moving. And it was just a very banal message. Hey, you don't know me. I know your parents. Can you have them give me a call? And enough that I knew on the spot that if I met him, then I would ask him if he taught body work. And that was, and later, a few months later, I met him. He did teach. And so that became sort of the next chapter of my own training. But this idea that the sound, the words that carry the meaning was definitely true in my own case.
Yeah, that's good. I tried to record some of my Aikido teacher's speech. He would talk like we're talking like right now, but I tried to record it. And I did record. I had the old cassette tapes.
Yeah.
I still got them, and then I listened to them. I can't listen to them because I cry. I just cannot listen to them. It's too intense for me. So I told him I know what he said. Actually, it's inside. Yeah. But that's what I mentioned. It's the voice is so powerful, and it can
carry so much.
So
yeah.
It's like he's standing here, but so sometimes it's good, but mostly I think, well, in your case, it's fine. The telephone, it happens too, and
yeah, but nothing substitutes what happens in person, of course.
No.
Yeah.
So I think we were done. Okay.
Well, no, I'm glad we came back to that. I really appreciate that, you sharing those, and I'm going to remember that, the gratitude, respect, the misogi, together, the purification, the carving your own path, or what was the word you used?
Kiri is cut.
Cut, yeah. Kiri.
So
cut your own path.
Finding your path and opening it up. Yeah. So that's a very hard word to translate, kiri hiraku. But in English, opening. Well, you think about it, come up with your own translation.
Right.
Finding your own. I usually say finding your own way. Finding your own way.
Finding your own way. Yeah.
Making it your own. Well, actually, finding your own. That's what it means, literally. Like cutting through the forest.
Right. It's like bushwhacking. Yeah.
And then social contribution. So
yeah.
That's a good one. Please remember that.
Oh, I will. Very cool. Very good. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Redbeard Embodiment Podcast. To learn more, visit us at redbeardsomatictherapy.com or send me an email at alex@redbeardsomatictherapy.com. If today's conversation resonated with you, help spread the word by subscribing and sharing with others. Hope to see you next time.